later, there had to come a day when I filled out my leather pants too well. I can't pinpoint the time I first became conscious of boys as boys. The only place we were permitted to meet them was at the rink. There we skated, sometimes daringly arm in arm with a boy, while Cookie or Emmy kept watch from a second-floor cafe overlooking the ice. I liked to be with boys. They skated better than girls. They were quicker-witted. They laughed instead of giggled. They dared anything. I felt at home with them. About my 10th or 11th year, I began to realize that the older boys liked me. Each morning as I turned the corner leading to Notre Dame de Sion, where the sisters taught me the rudiments of French, English, history, and mathematics, a chorus of shouts would greet me. "Here she comes! Hello, pretty Zsa Zsa!" Boys were leaning out the windows of St. Stephen's Academy across the street, waving frantically, "Zsa Zsa, look up here! Zsa Zsa, look at me! Please, Zsa Zsa!" Cookie, who escorted me daily back and forth, would grip my arm warningly. "Don't you dare look up," she would mutter fiercely under her breath. "Your father will skin you alive if he catches you flirting." I was not flirting. At school they called me a flirt, and perhaps I was, but not consciously. I blushed when the boys shouted after me, but I adored them for doing it. My visit to Ataturk was the first of many. I never spent more than an hour. I always had tea. He would sit in his deep easy chair with a glass. I did nearly all the talking. I spoke about whatever popped into my mind. The costume ball given by Monsieur Poncet, the French ambassador, to which at Sir Percy's suggestion, he said, "In any other century, my dear, you would have been a queen." I came as Helen of Troy. The behind-the-scenes gossip on Embassy Row, the dinner parties I attended, my latest gowns. Mother often sent me evening dresses because haute couture, she said, you surely won't find in that godforsaken Ankara. Who our dinner guests were, what they said, and what I really thought of them. Ataturk laughed a great deal. "Do you know," he said, "you have the life of practically all my officials in your hands?" Not because I knew any state secrets, but because when he asked me idly, "And what do they say about me?" I told him. He knew I could not lie to him. It was impossible to lie to him. Those terrible colorless eyes looked right through you. They had an oriental cast, for they seemed to turn obliquely upward at the outer corners, and when he laughed his eyes crinkled, the corners turned up even higher, and I was suddenly reminded of a laughing Chinese mask. He loved intrigue. He told me of a busy morning in which he received a steady stream of ambassadors, half of them not speaking to the other half. It required the greatest skill to avoid a diplomatic incident. I don't think I jeopardized anyone's position by my reports to Ataturk, but my heart swelled at the thought that I was his confidant, and I had a place so near the throne. From my room, I could see the sandy beach and a solitary stone pier stretching 100 feet or so into the sea. Sometimes, when I woke in the early morning, I would sit by the window and watch the dawn come. I faced directly east. The sun would rise out of the water, a burning yellow ball of fire, and light up my entire room. One morning, about 5 o'clock, as I sat staring dreamily out the window, my heart froze. I saw what appeared to be a gigantic man rising out of the sea like a sea god, towering, enormous, striding naked out of the sea, out of the flames of the rising sun. My God, I thought, is my imagination playing tricks again? I was dazzled. I couldn't see him clearly. Nothing was real in that hazy dawn, the sun so blindingly bright, the sky dark blue as a painting. Then I saw that it was a man, wearing blue jeans, naked from the waist up, standing on the stone pier, fishing. I watched him for a long while. When it was full daylight, he was gone. Next morning, at the same time, I slipped into a dress and, barefoot, went down to the beach with Josephine. The fisherman was there on the pier, the sun gleaming and shining on his suntanned body. I strolled toward him, kicking the sand with my bare toes. I couldn't see his face. He stood directly in the sun. When I was near, I ventured, "Hello." He looked up, and as though it was nothing extraordinary to see a barefooted girl walking the beach with her dog at 5:30 a.m., he said hello. I sat down, cross-legged on the sand, Josephine beside me, and watched him. He said nothing more. I said nothing more. When full daylight came, he took up his rod and bait, nodded to me, and left. We had not exchanged another word. The next morning I went down again. We nodded to each other, and that was all. I sat on the sand with Josephine, watching him. There was no one else in the world at that moment, only the two of us, the sea and my dog. I felt strangely content. The third morning he wasn't there. I missed him terribly. I did not know who he was, where he came from. All I knew was that he was a quiet, silent man who came before dawn each morning to fish on this lonely stretch of water. I thought, the whole world is empty because the stranger is not here. The fourth morning he appeared. I sat on the sand again, watching him. He came over and sat beside me. He said in broken English, "You are American?" I said, "No, I am Hungarian." He pointed to himself. "I'm Yugoslav." He had blue eyes, the powerful, rugged face of the Yugoslav mountaineer, with furrowed lines in his cheeks. I had always admired Yugoslavs. Father said they were the finest soldiers, a solid, honest people. We sat silently for a few moments, then he rose. He inclined his head jerkily and left. Thus began the most curious relationship of my life. Each morning he fished and I watched him. We met tacitly. I never learned his name. He never learned mine. He asked nothing. I volunteered nothing. I thought of him as the only friend I had. Suddenly, it was as though I'd been put before the basic facts of life. Everything was gone from me. Europe, Turkey, Hollywood, my husband, friends. It was as though we were the only two people left in the world. I was Eve, the first and last woman in the world, without name, without history. And he was Adam, the first and last man in the world, without name, without history.